And I'm pleased to present second edition of Digital Dialogue, where we will be discussing digitizing medium and small enterprises in Pakistan. Our esteemed panel constitute of Mr. Syed Mohsin, CEO, Pakistan Microfinance Network, Mr. Kamran Zubairi, CEO of Finja Lending Services, and Mr. Naveed Goraya, Chief Investment Officer, Karandas. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking out time and attending today's session. So,
thank you for having
moving
us.
forward with the session, let's discuss the format which we are going to follow today. So initially, we will be discussing the areas related to the topic, and towards the end, we will open the forum for participants to ask any questions.
So let's start with defining SMEs. There are a number of definitions available on the web, but we will stick to the definition given by State Bank of Pakistan, which states that SME is an entity which employs 50 people, including contractual staff, and have a maximum annual sales turnover of 150 million. Or SMEs, mostly countries के अंदर 90% of the overall enterprise constitute करती हैं और significantly contribute करती हैं towards the economic growth of those country. आज के सेशन की एक खास बात थी कि 27 जून को इंटरनेशनल डेज फॉर एसएमई सेलिब्रेट होता है और उसी के वजह से हमने आज ये सेशन ऑर्गेनाइज किया ताकि हम एसएमई की कंट्रीब्यूशंस टुवर्ड्स कंट्री उसको एक्नॉलेज कर सकें और इसके अलावा देखिए उनको जो चैलेंजेस फेस होते हैं उस पर बात कर सकें और ये देख सकें कि टेक्नोलॉजी इसमें किस तरह हेल्प कर सकती है एसएमईज को कि वो अपना 100% पोटेंशियल राइज करें और माइक्रो फाइनेंस और ईएमआई इंस्टीट्यूट्स इसमें क्या रोल प्ले कर सकते हैं. So let's start with our conversation. Or Mohsin Saab, I'll request you to shed some light on the importance of SMEs in a country like Pakistan. So over to you, Mohsin Saab.
Thank you, Saad. So I would actually slightly change the M from SME to convert this into MSEs. So for me, representing the micro sector, so I think the natural progression is micro to small enterprises. So I think what is very critical is that we need to make sure that the micro and small enterprise sector is a vibrant sector. We are able to provide them, especially given our context, financial services, in addition to a host of other services that they will require for their growth. But very critically, financial access to these entities. And by that, I mean not just credit, because that immediately comes to mind, but also the most important banking service, which is the deposit service. And linked to that is an insurance service. Sure. And all of that, if you ask me, so my vision of where I want to see the Pakistan digital process, especially in the context of micro and small enterprises, and more importantly, microfinance and micro enterprise sector, is a cashless sector, which is from end to end cashless. So rather than me making ATMs available for a cash withdrawal, if I can have a society in which we're able to link them all in a way so that they are able to purchase and sell their products from their vendors and to their customers through mobile wallets or through some means of digital technology. So that is what I envision in the next 5, 10, 15 years. That is where we should go. But that will be very critical. Similarly, to me, what is very important in taking this process forward is that rather than taking documentation of economy as an end goal, what is more important is that we take. So what is more important is
Saad, I think we've lost Mohsin.
I think so. It seems so. So, sir, Mohsen Saab ne bada pertinent point raise kiya and a very interesting point. So, it's not only about digitizing the sector, but we should more focus on getting it cashless and also digitize करेंगे तो paperless तो automatically हो जाएगा. लेकिन जो cashless की बात की है वो काफी interesting थी. तो सर I'll request you कि आप अपना point of view इसके ऊपर दें कि अगर हम cashless जा रहे हैं और SMEs की तरफ हमारा focus है तो what can be done in this regard और पाकिस्तान जैसे मुल्क के लिए ये कितना important है?
Sorry, Saad, you're asking me to address it?
Yes, sir. जी नवीद साहब आपसे पूछूं.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this forum, and it's a pleasure to be here on this esteemed forum. And oh, I see that Mohsen is back. Do you want Mohsen to continue, or would you like me to continue now?
So you
Yeah,
can continue and we can request Mohsen saab again.
So I think
yeah,
this is a
Saad,
great
first I
question.
would like to apologize because I don't know, my computer is suddenly off. So I'm sorry for that. Yes, Naveed Saab, continue, please.
Thank you, Mohsen. Look, the definition of SMEs we started off with is a good point because State Bank of Pakistan has a definition of S, which is 50, and then of course M, which is 250 people, and then certain revenue numbers, like for example, max 800 million or so. Now, these numbers were relevant many years ago, but they are less and less relevant. So we need to have that definition also kind of figured out as to what is an SME and whether it is now should be higher and a bigger number than the current that is in the policy. And I know there's been some work that's been done on that, and we need to see where it sets out as far as SBT is concerned. But moving forward, look, digitization of the SMEs is something which is slightly bigger, a pretty broad thing, as you were speaking earlier. SMEs not only, what is the incentive for SMEs to digitize? On a standalone basis, that doesn't mean much. It does, of course, increase efficiency, but there's a whole ecosystem around it.
Okay.
So there is their customer base. The customer base then online has a value chain. The value chain needs to have then of course certain degree of digitization to give that benefit to them. That generates data. The data is then used by the company for better decision making and more efficiency. On the other hand, then there is the regulator. The regulator needs to upgrade, and of course the company needs to, SMEs need to interact and engage with them on that. And I know there's a lot going on. Karan Raj is also helping SECP in that. And finally, it comes down to when that ecosystem is available, how does it increase access to finance? So yes, it means all of the above things, that there will be cashless economy and there will be a lot of ease of business and efficiencies, and the economies of scale will be there. But I think we need to think beyond the SME to the overall ecosystem and how that's progressing, and realize that it's going to be a very long haul to reach that stage. It's not going to be an overnight fix. So that's really it I wanted to say as a preamble, SME's importance. Certainly we can talk about it. So I'll pass the baton back to you now.
So thank you, sir. आपने nutshell में ही सब कुछ describe कर दिया है. Obviously, जब तक पूरा ecosystem develop नहीं होता, तब तक को बहुत ज़्यादा expect करना reasonable नहीं होगा from this sector. Although के efforts हो रही हैं and we are moving in the right direction. लेकिन जब तक I agree to that कि development of ecosystem is the base point जहाँ से हम लोग further move कर सकते हैं. So Kamran, please आप अपना thought process इसके ऊपर हमसे share करें कि how do you perceive it, और आपके ख्याल में ये कितना important है SMEs पाकिस्तान जैसे मुल्क के लिए अगर हम लोगों ने grow करना है, और अगर जो digital पाकिस्तान इस वक्त एक buzzword बना हुआ है, so इसमें आपका क्या thought process होगा?
Ji, thank you, Saad. Exactly what Mohsen Saab had said, first of all, on the definition of the SME. Naveed Saab also touched upon that. We see it as an MSE, similar to how Mohsen Saab had put it across. And frankly, Naveed Saab is yet again, I use the term the second time today, he's hit the nail on the head. By categorically stating that it's up to the entire ecosystem and it's not just the SME. I mean, yes, again, to repeat, efficiency is there, but if the respective company is receiving payments in cash, they have to then forward that cash somewhere else. So how do they become cashless? And I think one of the key elements over here that we've actually we've seen for the first time, if anything good that's come out of the pandemic, is the uprise in digital payments that individuals have been making. And if any financial institution was to see it, it was predominantly because IBFT charges were waived. And the minute
Exactly.
IBFT charges were waived, people were more comfortable in terms of making digital payments. Yes, there was not many, the malls were not open. A lot of retail outlets were shut, restaurants were shut. There was e-commerce has gone up. E-commerce again, it was COD, but a lot of people wanted to pay digitally. They were using e-payment gateways. Transactions on e-payment gateways went up. So clearly, the whole idea of behavior change at a mass level can come when there is no friction, and friction comes in from pricing. So when you remove pricing, which is now a proven fact, your digital payments automatically go up. So institutions such as ourselves need to also ask ourselves that if we are to price, if or rather if we are to incentivize our clientele or non-clientele at large in terms of what is the incentive they see to transact digitally, and this is consumer behavior, because the minute consumer behavior change, automatically that will inculcate a behavior change at the merchant level as well. Merchant being an SME or an MSE, they will start transacting digitally as well. uh, you know the state bank has once again revisited the IBFT charges post COVID. So I don't know how consumers will react to it now that the charges are going to be back. I know they're tier based. Up to 25,000 rupees is free of cost, but then again, that's for the consumer level. Now an SME, 25,000 rupees would be a relatively small amount to transact with. So when an
बिल्कुल
SME tries to transact digitally, they will get charged. And these are companies where bottom line or their cost control is imperative. I mean, as consumers, I remember, back when I was in banking, we used to talk to customers and they would go looking for the bank's ATM so that they could escape 15 rupees in offers charges.
exactly exactly.
So they would end up
गाड़ी चला
spending
लेंगे 10 मिनट के लिए लेकिन 15 रुपए बचा
150 रुपए 200 रुपए का फ्यूल आप खर्च कर देंगे सिर्फ 15 रुपए बचाने के लिए, लेकिन आपने 150 रुपए लगा दिए। तो अगेन वो ऑफर्स के चार्जेस क्यों हैं? And why is it that in developed countries, in Europe, there are no offers charges? Any and every ATM is free of cost for cash withdrawal, regardless of where you have a bank account. So I mean, the crux of it is that the minute you remove fee, you can actually inculcate a behavior change, a mass behavior change. And once that happens, then we can start talking about slightly at an upper scale in terms of how merchant behavior can change. बहुत से book stores हैं, if you are paying by credit card, they will charge you 2% as a customer. But if you're paying by cash, they'll give you a 10% discount. Why? So you're incentivizing cash at merchant level, but you're not incentivizing a pos transaction. Why is that? So we need to ask ourselves that pricing and fee is something that's very sensitive to this particular segment.
Thank you, Kamran. So you have raised very pertinent points, and I'll get back to you on this. So Mohsin sir, please, if you could complete, आपका system shutdown हो गया था. I think ये थोड़ा सा
जी
contagious हो गया. पहले मेरा laptop बंद हुआ और फिर impact immediately आप पे आ गया. So
and
if you
I am
could please
using my
continue.
mobile now.
Okay, same here.
Yeah. Okay. So I will start my video also. Okay. So I was just saying that rather than so I will pick up from where Kamran left, and I would also say that so if we want to have at the demand side level, the micro and small enterprise become financially inclusive, the incentives should be more. So rather than that, they should be allowing discounts on POS rather than charging me extra on POS. Similarly, I would also suggest that the way we should tackle this situation is that rather than the policymakers or us thinking as digitization as a tool of not inclusive finance, but taxing a particular segment of the society and documenting the economy, that should for me be the end goal or a byproduct of an inclusive finance society. And so that will change the way policymakers would start thinking about putting in place a framework that allows the inclusive finance through digitization. And the only way that this could happen is when people start feeling that there are incentives to being part of the ecosystem, and number two, that they can also start feeling that this is not a tool for government to start collecting taxes from us. So I very strongly feel that if that happens, that should be one of the byproduct of this entire scheme. On the supply side, I would think that the way the different financial institutions or even the digital financial service providers or microfinance providers should take it forward is the way is rather than working in silos, it should be through some interoperable operations or through shared platforms where we are able to reduce costs and make the access widely available through a many-to-many model. So these are my two thoughts in terms of the demand side and also the supply side.
Okay, wait, thank you, sir, Zabel. तो सर अभी कामरान ने एक बहुत पर्टिनेंट पॉइंट रेज किया कि कोविड के अंदर देयर वाज अ वेरी चैलेंजिंग सिचुएशन ओवरऑल, और उसके बाद हाउ इट बिकम एन अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर द ई कॉमर्स, और ई कॉमर्स के अंदर डिफरेंट प्लेटफॉर्म्स ने ग्रो किया. प्राइसिंग की बात की गई है, आपने भी की गई, आपने भी प्राइसिंग को टच किया. इसी तरह नवीद साहब आपने जो ओवरऑल इकोसिस्टम की बात की है. So let's move forward and discuss what are the challenges that are currently being faced by the SMEs. Okay, we understand that pricing is a challenge, और pricing को curb करने के different तरीके हैं. Banks obviously काम कर रहे हैं इसके ऊपर, लेकिन other than pricing, what are the major challenges जो कि SME को face करने पड़े हैं और जिनको address किया जाना चाहिए ताकि वो further grow कर सकें और contribute कर सकें towards the economy.
By the way,
So
when we speak of pricing, we're talking about pricing in terms of payments. So pricing,
okay.
again, there are various elements to it as well, which payments is just one ambit in terms of digital payments के ऊपर pricing एक conversation है, और फिर pricing at large तो हर level के ऊपर आके impact करेगी SME को. So be it credit or be it anywhere else. So just wanted to clarify that so far we've only spoken about behavior change at the consumer level, which will indefinitely impact the SME at a level above them. So pricing on the consumer level is
Okay.
something that we've discussed right now, not at the SME level, because that will be the mass behavior change.
Okay, so I would like to respond to this question of challenge. In my view, if this is a challenge which is a general challenge in nature, not just focused on digitization. So if you ask me, I think the way we can handle the MSME sector is that we need to actually put the M and the S and the other M in silos. So there is micro, there is small, and there is medium. In my view, there is a very good framework, policy framework and regulatory framework for providing financial access to micro enterprises. Similarly, for the medium-sized enterprises, commercial banks, I'm pretty sure reach them depending upon the business cycles also. It is the S which is the missing link in this entire spectrum of MSME financial access. So I would think that the entire focus going forward should be on how do we tackle providing. I would take this liberty, and I could be wrong about it, but I think that rather than thinking of that, and I think if you hear the current finance minister's press talk or different interviews that he gives, he's very clearly putting it that from Kamyab Rozgar program or Kamyab Jawan program, which is sort of MSE or SME financing, what is going to work is that commercial banks becomes wholesalers and then lend to the micro sector. I think that is the natural progression. We use the strength of the commercial banks, which is the balance sheet, which is their funding availability, and we use the strength of the microfinance sector, which is working at the grassroots level and understanding the nuances, the risks, the cash flows those of generally speaking micro, but also a natural progression is small enterprises, and then allowing them to move up the continuum. So I think this is one challenge that needs to be looked at and addressed when we convert this SME into MSME discussion and focus on micro and small and medium slightly separately, but more in terms of a continuum from micro to small.
Okay. So नवीद साहब आप प्लीज शेयर करें कि आपका क्या थॉट है कि क्या challenges हैं जो SME को फेस करने पड़ रहे हैं, और since Karandas is working very actively with different organizations और digital के ऊपर भी आप लोगों की तो बहुत ज़्यादा traction है, so if you could shed some light on it, कि what are the challenges that you are practically facing while working with different organizations और जिनको immediately address करना चाहिए.
Certainly, I think it's a very big topic once again, and I think I'd like to kind of focus on a few things here. I agree with Mohsen. Micro is a slightly more defined, universe there, with approximately about what Mohsen would correct me, about 340 billion or so of outstanding loans. You compare it with SMEs. SMEs only have about 840 billion, which is supposed to be a much bigger size. So SMEs are facing a problem, but you have to look at it from both the supply and demand side. On the supply side, there is an information asymmetry. There is from the SMEs, the data is not clear, it's not available. On the supply side, again, there are risk policies and, of course, enough crowding out of the private credit by the government. So the only credit available to SMEs is 7% of the private credit, whereas in other markets, it could be as high as 30% or more in the region. 1% of our GDP is given to SMEs as credit, whereas in South Asia, it ranges all the way up to about 9 to 10%. So when you look at the constraints that you're putting from the supply side on to the SME sector, there is less and less incentive for the SMEs to, organize themselves and go to borrow. We as Karandas, and of course, on the demand side, there also SMEs are seeing up to 3 weeks, 4 weeks for just a small credit application to be processed. There's a case for digitization. Let the SMEs, get their documents in order, digitize themselves, get registered, come in the formal sector, and then borrow from the banks. But the informal sector is way more efficient. Informal sector will lend you at a higher interest rate or will give you credit at the drop of a hat. So that's another disincentive for SMEs to go when the speed or the pace of lending is. Now, as far as the small and medium enterprise constraint and how we are operating, you mentioned Karandas, we are now about $130 million invested in our financial intervention in the MSME sector. And we do it through several instruments, and we're both on the demand side and supply side. And that is gives us a kind of a bird's eye view on what problems the supply side is seeing, i.e. the banks and DFIs, when we partner with them. And we are private equity investors in the SMEs. We can see what problems we are facing as equity holders in SMEs as to what the banks require and the SMEs' own attitude towards borrowing. Karandas is also participating in terms of grant. We're doing capacity building at SME level and at bank level to improve their processes. We set up the supply chain finance departments, assisted in setting up supply chain finance departments for Bank Al Falah and Nizam Bank. We're also providing, innovation challenges to which some of the companies that have come out of incubators, and one of them is Credit Fix, for example, great people. Also, we have, supported Techlogics, which, I think Kamran knows is also in the supply chain finance business now, and also provides other facilities when the technology is concerned. We're also providing knowledge platform as a vehicle to do industry studies that are then adopted by the industry banks to then create new financial products. So we've been intervening in all these areas through various instruments. We've identified the gaps, and Pakistan Microfinance Investment Company is a one-of-a-kind microfinance wholesale institution that we've set up, again, to address this one gap that we saw. We've just set up a dedicated SME finance MDFI, which is the first in the country at this stage to address these gaps and to see if we can either not only improve processes but also use technology as a tool to reduce, to improve customer experience, and through that demonstrate to the market that lending to SMEs is not as risky a business as it appears. So it's a long answer, but I just wanted to let you know that our view is that it's a huge market. $15 billion worth of lending is out there. 4.3 million SMEs are out there. The last census said only about 3 million, but and the actual credit is only extended to 160,000. So something is going wrong, and technology is a part of it. But at the same time, there is also a problem with the SMEs at their end to build the capacity, do the documentation, get them up to speed to be bankable. And on the supply side, for the banks not to get crowded out with the government, but also take more risk. So I'll stop here. It's a long topic, as I said, but I'm happy to then proceed further after other participants have contributed.
Sure. So now we have a little bit clarity what challenges are being faced at the supply side and at the demand side. Although we are clear that there is a demand and supply is not adequate to address it. और डिमांड साइड के ऊपर जिस तरह सर आपने बताया कि आप डिफरेंट इंटरवेंशंस हो रही हैं लोगों को थ्रू नॉलेज भी एक सपोर्ट किया जा रहा है digitization is a tool which can help the SMEs so that they can make their process more robust. So going forward, I would like to ask firstly from Kamran, Kamran कि माइक्रो फाइनेंस और EMI इंस्टीट्यूशंस कैसे रोल प्ले कर सकते हैं इस गैप को कम करने के लिए. वी नो कि देयर इज अ डिमांड और सप्लाई साइड पे गवर्नमेंट का इंटरवेंशंस हैं बट दे आर नॉट सफिशिएंट टू एड्रेस द डिमांड व्हिच इज अवेलेबल इन द मार्केट. सो माइक्रो में जैसे मोहसिन साहब ने हाईलाइट किया कि माइक्रो के लिए एक सेगमेंट अवेलेबल है, दे आर बीइंग एड्रेस्ड, बट जो स्मॉल स्पेसिफिक इंडस्ट्रीज, इफ वी स्पेसिफिकली टॉक अबाउट स्मॉल इंडस्ट्रीज, how can we as microfinance and EMI institutions can pitch in to fill this gap and help them grow? So Kamran, please, over to you.
जी देखें it's a very pertinent question, and taking a page of Naveed Saab's book, what he was talking about is something that's I mean that's one of the main things that we do at Finja, in terms of lending to the MSME, M being the first, M being actually the most pertinent one, and then moving on to the S. Now we consider ourselves to be in a unique position, since as two separate companies, we hold two separate licenses. One as an EMI entity regulated by the State Bank, and the other one as an NBFI regulated by the SECP. Now, obviously, the reason why we even formed the NBFI was so that we can get into lending, and that was always on the cards, because we always felt that the MSME segment has been largely underserved, and there is capital inadequacy in this particular function, and the stats are all in front of you anyways. But at the same time, we also wanted to inculcate that behavior change of wallets, in terms of deposit taking, in terms of a front facing KYC application under the regulations of the State Bank. So we, both the entities at Finja, we work hand in hand in terms of providing that front facing KYC wallet to these merchants, and then subsequently allowing them to sort of help them actually to facilitate in terms of digital payments, but at the same time giving them that credit push as well, in terms of requiring money to run their business, because again, there is a shortage of credit being served to this particular segment. So this is how we have utilized our EMI and NBFC licenses, in terms of using it at best effort basis. But there are other entities that are coming in with EMI licenses. Every entity has their own business plan. Some entities are more focused towards individual payroll disbursements. That is something that we do as well, but our core focus is obviously on the MSME. uh, but every institution that has been granted the pilot approval by the state bank, and now I think they're about close to about 9, they've submitted their own use cases, particularly for
Mm.
remittances, inward remittances. I mean, Pakistan does benefit a lot from foreign remittances coming in from the Middle East and European countries in particular. The beneficiaries of those remittances should be able to receive those remittances directly into a wallet, which again further digitizes their behavior. कि अगर पैसे एक जगह आ गए हैं तो उस पैसे को फिर आगे डिजिटली पे करना ज़्यादा आसान है बनस्पत इसके कि किसी एटीएम से जाके पैसे निकालना है इन टर्म्स ऑफ कैश. तो इनफ्लो जब डिजिटली हो रहा है तो उसमें there is a high probability that the outflow of that same inflow would also be used through a digital channel. That's how the EMIs are coming into play in this space. But Naveed Saab also touched upon a very pertinent point that when these SMEs are, when they require capital or when they require credit and they go to a bank, it's not just a documentation, which is quite a lengthy process. It's also the pricing element, because obviously these are all always taken as a high risk as far as
Mm.
banks are concerned. And when they are marked as a high risk, they do not get favorable terms in terms of borrowing pricing. What do they do? And evidently, most of them go to unstructured financing services, be it a loan shark somewhere or an RT, or whichever area they put into. They can just go ahead and obtain credit at through unstructured means because it's easier to get. In this level, it's interesting to note that they're not looking at the cheaper option. They're looking at the more convenient and easy option, because rather than approaching a bank and waiting for 14 days to be told that your credit is not approved, or if it's even
Mm.
approved, then you need to submit such documentation and whatnot. So we've successfully tested this in the market now, where we can closed loop payments and make it an end-to-end secure setup, which is another reason what
Mm.
now we're talking to banks, and a lot of banks are talking to us in terms of plugging in their book, is because of the fact that we are able to close loop a transaction, which predominantly what that means is that the money that any business needs to function is being utilized for the set purpose that that business needs to continue. I mean, the continuity is there. चाहे वो एक दुकानदार हो, retailer हो, merchant हो, wholesaler हो, या वो एक डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर हो जो प्रिंसिपल या एंकर से सामान उठा रहे, या अगर आप अपस्ट्रीम चले जाएं तो वो सप्लायर हो किसी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसर्न का, उसकी अगर इनवॉइस डिस्काउंट करनी हो, तो मुख्तलिफ एलिमेंट्स हैं, एंड दीज ऑल स्मॉलर प्लेयर्स दैट सराउंड द लार्ज corporate, which is your manufacturing concern. So all the players that are feeding into that one manufacturing concern, be it upstream or downstream, they all require that access to credit. Now, again, the stats as far as SME lending is concerned are in front of everyone. They're not all being served, but they still have a requirement. So entities like ourselves, which have limited capital, and now we're getting books from banks as well, can have started servicing this particular segment. And it's a journey and a half, and we've just set forth on it, but it's going to continue, and it will have its ripple effect, and we are very confident about that.
एक हम लोगों को एक चीज हमें नजर आ रही है कि केवाईसी है, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन है, और ये केवाईसी और डॉक्यूमेंटेशन जब आप इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर में जाते हैं तो वहां पे अवेलेबल नहीं होती, और हमारी जो इनएफिशिएंसीज हैं एज फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस, उसका एक बहुत बड़ा फैक्टर ये चीजें हैं कि हमें केवाईसी और डॉक्यूमेंटेशन पे एक बहुत बड़ी एफर्ट पुट करनी पड़ती है। तो इसके लिए हम क्या कर सकते हैं, जिससे हम उनको फैसिलिटेट भी कर सकें, और जो रेगुलेटरी रिक्वायरमेंट है और उसके अलावा आपको पता है कि एफएटीएफ वगैरह की रिक्वायरमेंट्स और उस तरह की रिक्वायरमेंट से भी हमें मीट करना पड़ता है। तो व्हाट कुड बी द मिडल ग्राउंड जहाँ पे हम एफिशिएंटली इस सेक्टर को सर्व कर सकते हैं इन द लिमिटेशंस दैट वी हैव राइट नाउ।
Okay, Ji, so you are right. One of the bigger issues that we as a microfinance industry right now are facing includes the FATF requirements. So there is now multiple KYC requirements that needs to be filled in by the microfinance providers. And I'm talking specifically about the non-banks because MFPs were also already following a lot of requirements set by the central bank. But this AML CFT requirements
Exactly.
have become really difficult. So what they are leading to is not only adding the cost in terms of acquisition, but they are also leading to a lot of capex requirements in terms of how do we have information about um, the clients which are on the schedule of UN or NECTA schedule. So you need to populate your MISs because there is heavy penalty if you are in some ways you've been able to provide loan to someone and you are caught by the inspection. So how do you address that? One way of doing that is that there are no few companies which are providing this service. So, like for example, I don't want to name institutions, but I'm sure most of you know that. So there are a number of institutions, say ABC and then DEF, and they are providing portal-based services, and you can be connected to them through an API integration. Now, this is costly. So what PMN is trying to do through its newly set up company called Munsalek, we are going to link our members with these service providers, and what they are doing is they are populating their entire database with all these with the list of all that comes either from the UN or from NECTA or from SCCP. So this is all uploaded by these organizations. I think one way of providing support to the entities would be that if these entities are recognized in a certain way by the government through maybe Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, that these are notified to have to be recognized for provision of this service. The second bigger issue is the access to NADRA facilities, and NADRA doesn't also provide you an API. Similarly, NADRA's costs are on the higher side. So, and every not just for opening a deposit account, but even for giving a loan, you have to get the entire this verisis done by even the lender, so the service is not available now. And by that I mean the API service is not available. So you have to do it offline through batches. So we are talking to NADRA about this. We are talking to both State Bank and SCCP about it. So if I would say if we can have the AML CFT ports available on the one side, and on the other side they're recognized by some government authority, and on the other side, NADRA becomes a facilitator for this access. And I would acknowledge that they do provide that facility, but they have certain security related protocols that they need to matter. So we need to move with due apologies to everyone, maybe even the security agencies. But if the priority, I can understand, yeah, that there are priorities of security, but there are priorities of economic growth and financial inclusion and economic integration. So NADRA should access should be easily available with all the security protocols taken care of. Similarly, it should be cost effective.
Thank you, sir. So we are having some very interesting comments from the audience as well, and we will get back to them shortly. Naveed sir, since you are working both on the demand and supply side, और आपने बताया भी कि किस तरह आप लोग interventions कर रहे हैं through current task. So आपके ख्याल में जो माइक्रो फाइनेंस और EMI या NBFIs के जो contribution है, वो demand side के ऊपर क्या मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट आपके ख्याल से क्या चीज हो सकती है जो कि इस चीज को इस प्रॉब्लम को एड्रेस करने में मदद दे, जो जिससे हम इस सेक्टर को बेहतर तरीके से सर्व कर सकते हैं?
Dekhiye, I would like to take a step back and add to what Mohsin was saying, and I think hopefully it will answer your question as well. Dekhiye, cost is a very, very big element for the SMEs to then adopt any kind of change in practice or behavior, and the benefit has to obviously be higher. If you want access to finance mil jaye, or they have efficiency and they increase their sales and all those things. Because pocket drives everything. You make more money, you do things, right? It's also come in the tax net. But there is more development in addition to NADA and others on the regulatory side with SCCP. Again, referring to Karna's with funding, participating, or working with SECP. And SECP is developed a STR module, security key digitization. And the second is the entire digitization of SECP itself. And in that, there are 2 or 3 major components. The relevant one for this discussion, I think, would be that financial statements or data generated by these entities through the SECP, but it sits there, resides there in a dumb format. It's PDFs, and there you have to download those. And now, with the system that we're working with to help them set up, it is going to be in a manner that it will be digitized and uploaded in a manner to the SCCP that will be available to all the providers of either capital or other services to the SMEs, and it will help them access the market as well in whatever form they want. And this particular thing might notifications on the application capacity to go there as the next stage to ensure that that particular capacity is built at the SME level, also stage,
Okay.
where then efficiently integrated with the regulator, other means of accessing the relevant services that they need. So yes, from a micro perspective, I agree with most. I think the e-commerce element, pandemic, has opened the door for using GMI and the
Have have you dropped Mohsin sir? Have you? I think you have dropped Naveed sir. Is it so?
It was my turn to eat
Okay.
crow, as they say, and I dropped off. So
So Kamran पहले बता दें आप क्योंकि सिर्फ आप ही रह गए.
Sir, I think what I'll do is I'll just switch off my computer and switch it back on so that we can get the voodoo out.
Exactly.
Level
See,
playing field.
Naveed sir, please continue. Yeah.
I wanted to yield the floor back to you because I think that is primarily the new kind of light that's shown on the SME sector, especially the S, which is that as a result of the recent pandemic and issues that we had, we've seen a lot of digitization, a lot of smaller entities, retail outlets have gone digital in terms of sales. The percentage of sales has grown substantially, and that brings the benefit, or that opens the door for further integration. And I think that perhaps answers your question a bit more in detail, that we see more and more of that habit happening. It's formed, it's opened a way, it's opened a path, and I think there is only but growth to come in this direction.
So I think now I'm going to touch a very interesting topic. See, जहाँ से हमने बात शुरू की और eventually अब digitization के ऊपर हम लोग move कर गए. So what could be interesting, yeah, what could be a motivating factor for the SMEs to invest in digitization? हम लोगों ने बात की कि it's costly. दूसरी चीज शुरू में भी बात की गई थी कि ये डॉक्यूमेंट हो जाएंगी चीजें, और जो स्मॉल एंड मीडियम एंटरप्राइज हैं जब वो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की बात करते हैं तो गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशंस आ जाती हैं उनके लिए कि जी अब हमारी इनकम सबको पता चल जाएगी, फिर एक टैक्स का इम्पैक्ट है. ऑल्दो वी ऑल वांटेड टू हैव अ डॉक्यूमेंटेड इकोनॉमी, लेकिन दीज आर द फियर्स दैट दे एग्जिस्ट इन द माइंड्स ऑफ द एसएमईज एंड वी हैव टू एड्रेस दिस. सो अगर हम डिजिटाइजेशन की बात करते हैं और इट्स अ कंप्लीट बिहेवियरल चेंज, so what could encourage them to invest in digitization, and how this could be arranged for them? So anyone of the panelists could take the lead on this.
Okay.
Navita, I'll request you.
Yeah, Naveed sir, I was going to say that you're the expert
Ji
in
Kamran.
this.
Oh no, Kamran, I think why don't you not participate? Let me just give you this round because if I start, then I won't stop. So
I know. I was actually looking at the questions this morning as well, and I was wondering that how do we capture this in 45 minutes is just beyond me because each question opens up into a discussion on its own. But to be very brief about this, look, there are so many platforms available now. One thing that's been fantastic for the country has been the influx of venture capitalist funds that have come through in Pakistan in the last 5 months on its own. There are companies who have raised a substantial amount of funds collectively, and that's seen that basically goes on to show that fintech startups that are coming into this space, they're getting heavily funded, and obviously the business cases are being reviewed. The due diligence is being done by experts sitting outside Pakistan. This is influx of forex that's already coming in. But other than that, these platform businesses are being created for a reason. It's not just to I mean, it's not a burden as far as having a cost towards digitization is concerned, because you have retail platforms, you have e-commerce platforms that don't that have no cost to it to adopt by any merchant on its own. Similarly, there are various companies that are creating platforms for digitizing sales invoices. There are companies that are using payroll tools, payroll processing, vendor management, such as ourselves also, where we use Finja Business, not just on its own, but also in partnership with banks. And one of the partner banks is Terranor Microfinance Bank. So the idea is that when these platforms are there that do not require any capex from the SME side and there is no cost, it's just very easy to adopt, and it's at no charge on its own anyways. If they really do intend to bring that efficiency in their payments and their collections, there are a lot of financial institutions other than ours also that have historically provided fee collection as a tool for universities or any educational or non-education institute to collect fees digitally. But I think one thing that's super important is the interoperability. QR has never been a success in Pakistan because of that particular reason. QR payments एक फैड आया था आज से 3 साल पहले, हर मर्चेंट के पास क्यूआर लगे हुए थे, लेकिन अब वो सारे क्यूआर मर्चेंट्स ने उठा के नीचे रख लिए। क्यों रख लिए? बिकॉज इंटरऑपरेबिलिटी नहीं है। अब मेरे पास ये वाला वॉलेट नहीं है तो मैं क्यूआर स्कैन नहीं कर सकता। मेरे पास ये वाला वॉलेट है, इसका क्यूआर इस मर्चेंट के पास नहीं है। So when the POS can become interoperable, then why can't the QR become interoperable as well? Because that is something that's the need of the hour. Because अगर मुझे किसी दुकान पर खड़े होकर कैश ही देना है क्योंकि उसके पास पॉस नहीं है, बिकॉज पॉस की मशीन पे ज्यादा कॉस्ट लगेगी एज अपोज टू अ प्रिंट आउट ऑफ अ क्यूआर, दैट अगेन is cost effective. So the minute QR interoperability on QR happens, that POS goes completely obsolete. So all the heavy investment that's been done on a machine goes on the side, which should be the case in any case, कि अगर आपको डिजिटल पेमेंट्स को बिहेवियर करना है और मर्चेंट को अगर डिजिटली पेमेंट नहीं मिलेगी तो वो क्या करेगा? So, it's not just a cost. I think the biggest issue over here is coming into the net, or, in focus as far as your payments, as far as your sales are concerned, because obviously we know so many businesses that maintain multiple ledgers in their companies so that they can avoid that additional taxation bracket, or they can avoid, an FBR raid or a sales tax a challan or anything of the sort. तो वहां पे ये कतराते हैं डिजिटल पेमेंट्स अडॉप्ट करने के लिए। बट कॉस्ट का आई डोंट थिंक अब इतना बड़ा इशू रहा है कि चूंकि इतने प्लेटफॉर्म्स अब बन चुके हैं और बैंक्स भी अब ये बहुत से फीचर्स एट स्पेशली माइक्रो फाइनेंस बैंक्स आर नाउ ऑफरिंग दिस फीचर्स फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट। सो आई मीन शुरू में मैंने बात करी थी आईबीएफटी पेमेंट्स की, और अब मैं बात कर रहा हूँ इंटरऑपरेबिलिटी ऑफ क्यूआर, if you really want to inculcate that digitization and that behavior change.
I think Saad,
Very pertinent,
one of the
Amran.
things there
Thank
is
you very much. Ji, sir.
So one of the things is that without, I mean, it's sometimes not just incurring additional because there are already systems in place, which is the low-hanging fruit that gives a good experience. Example, when you look at small distributor financing, there are hundreds of thousands of merchants out there who already are on some kind of a sales platform in the supply chain, right? Through distributors and then
Agreed.
onwards up to maybe multinational corps or the large anchor corps. That data resides with entities like Finja and other mobility providers, and that data is gold. So when you have that integration of a tripartite agreement with a bank, with the particular provider, or the distributor and the platform provider, you can mine and you can create a lending product without much additional cost on any of the parties. The merchant already has that platform through which they are buying goods, and there's a payment behavior for them. They already have that platform, the mobile wallet, etc., in which they can receive the credit and also pay from there. So ये थोड़े से low hanging fruit हैं which are already happening with the fintechs that are coming online, and we will see a lot of those. And there are a number of other fintechs that can come in a number of areas which are still empty. So that will drive it. And demonstration effect is what we always say, which will make people want to avoid and do more things, adopt and do more things. So I mean, that's really it in terms of my view, that there's not as much resistance if they see the benefit. In fact, who knows, they might even be benefiting more out of it economically by coming into the net or getting documented. Just need a demonstration of that.
Exactly, sir. यानी कि we need to show them value, और अगर उन्हें value नजर आएगी तो automatically they'll get attracted to it. So thank you, sir. Mohsen Saab, if you could pitch in last 2 minutes, and then we will move open the floor to the audience for questions. So आप अगर इसमें कुछ add करना चाहें तो.
And Mohsen Saab is lost. I think it's just dropped off.
Mohsen Saab. Okay. तो मुझे लगता है कि जो कामरान आपने ड्रॉप होना था, मोहसिन साहब ने सेकंड हिट ले लिया.
It wasn't me. I mean, I have nothing to do with it.
Okay. So I think now we can open the floor for participants to ask questions. And we have already overrun, so I'll try to conclude it in another. If there is any question, so audience, if you want to ask any questions, you can raise hands.
I think Saad, there are about 4 to 5 questions in the chat that has been left.
There are more of.
Let's
sure.
Let's address those, and then we can open it one by one. If by raise of hand, people can ask.
Sure. So there is a question from SM and Sood. Shouldn't the government look into setting up a digital stack which would provide all the required KYC details through API? So, Naveed Saab, if you could answer this.
Well, I would probably be, other participants might add more value than me, but I believe Tasdeeq is one. There are other credit bureaus as well. There is a centralized KYC at the, at least linked to the stock exchange. There are a number of other initiatives that will and can come up. I think some of them are half cooked right now, but it will certainly add value. And I believe Mohsin can add more information about the platform he was talking about, which will have a full circle, not only data, but also linkage with banks and other things. So Monsulek, Tasdeeq, a number of others, the KYC platform, the link to the PSX, these are there, and I think more needs to be done to streamline the account opening process, the KYC process of each of these underlying users.
Ji, Mohsin Saab, do you want to add to this KYC question? I think Saad has paused or dropped. आप म्यूट पर हैं मोहसिन साहब.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now you're audible.
Okay. Okay, so what Naveed Saab mentioned, I would add to it, unless Kamran, we've lost Saad. So you are hosting us right now, Kamran.
Well, Saad is in and out, so I figured that since
Okay.
we're running overtime, we might as well get a move
Yeah.
on.
I am also going in and out, but I think there is a India stack. And what they have done is that all those components that Navid Sab was mentioning about the KYC platform, the Nadra database, the credit bureau's database, the digital database available with Easy Pesa or Taze or Jazz, these all, similarly in their country, the educational certificates, these are all uploaded with the relevant regulators or relevant authorities, and they are through a, I would say, like a blockchain. They are all, it's like a blockchain where they are integrated through an API. And so if I just use CNIC of, say, Syed Musin Ahmed, and I can pick up his credit history, his record in terms of his educational certificates, his credit profile, and so that is the level of interoperability that we need to move towards. And I think that is one of the recommendations that needs to go to through maybe the Pakistan FinTech Network or the FinTech Association or whoever is dealing with these issues. But that Pakistan stack will be very helpful in terms of opening up the entire spectrum of right now silo-based identification portals available in Pakistan.
Also, Mohsin Saab, if I'm not mistaken, the SECP was actually doing something. I mean, SECP has been doing a lot of things over the course of the last 12 to 18 months in terms of this digitization of space. But one of the key elements in one of our meetings in Islamabad was of the fact that they're creating a portal whereby all companies, company KYC data, such as your Form 29s, your NTNs, and the sort, would be actually made available, and that'll be a plug and play for banks to actually download that data rather than requesting for an SECP certified true copy from companies at the time of account opening. So that I feel if that portal is up and running at a company level, if you want to open an account, it can be much easier for banks to actually download that information themselves rather than asking that from clients to actually submit. So that would just remove that friction also. I'm not sure if that is still if that's live or not, but this is a conversation I'm giving reference to roughly about 8 months back.
I think you are right. I have not used it, but I know that what you are referring to. So I agree. That's a very useful portal available. But I'm actually suggesting that all the different portals that are available in Silo needs to be integrated. And there is a model available in India, and that they call it India Stack. It's a very decentralized, like a blockchain, and it's API integrated, and you can collect any kind of information of a particular individual by just using their Aadhaar number. So in our case, Nadra number.
Yeah, yeah.
And
But
I
I think
think
Okay,
another
sir.
important
So
element
maybe
could be also,
Naveed sir
like
can get.
Nadra
I think
Verisis and Nadra KYC is still it's still very much approachable. I mean, every financial entity can plug and play with Nadra as far as a CNIC verification is concerned, but it's very difficult to do the same with the company level documentation. Individual accounts के लिए तो आपने biometric करा लिया या आपने शनाख्ती कार्ड से Verisis निकलवा लिया तो आपकी KYC एक प्राइमरी लेवल की हो जाती है. बट जो कंपनी लेवल के ऊपर डॉक्यूमेंटेशन है वहां पर जाके ज्यादा फ्रिक्शन आता है in my in my opinion. I mean, I could be completely wrong,
yeah,
but that's where companies hesitate to open an account.
you are right. Yes.
Right. Kamran, there is a direct question for you. Or do you think Digital Pakistan policy is in compliance of what we need?
Digital Pak, yeah, sorry. I was just reading the question. Digital Pakistan policy is a very broad policy. I think to sum it down, each incumbent is doing what they're doing in terms of bringing all the pieces together. But the Digital Pakistan policy uh, is another policy which, obviously, if it's not brought into effect by the existing players, will really have no impact. And again, this accounts for a mass behavior change from businesses and consumers alike. But yeah, I mean, and I'm talking about um, interoperability in QR. I'm talking about um, IBFT charges waivers or offers ATM charges waivers, very small things. But then this has to be run at a policy level, either by the finance ministry or the interior ministry. But something that we've seen, what Mohsin Saab touched upon, that obviously these are all elements in silos, and that's perhaps one of the reasons, because the financial ecosystem is reporting into one ministry, and the verification team is reporting into another ministry altogether. So maybe the
Mm.
interoperability over there can really the you know solve a lot of issues. But again, yes, uh, we keep throwing this buzzword around, digitization, quite a lot. Digital Pakistan has been being heard for the last at least a year and a half now. But and frankly, I mean, I hate to say this, but had it not been for the pandemic, we would not see this upside in terms of digital payments to begin with, policy or no policy. Let's call a spade, because had this pandemic not locked us down, and there's a reason why Zoom stocks have gone up, because we've all started using Zoom more than we probably would have in our entire lives on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I mean, had it not been for the pandemic, the the actual Digital Pakistan policy would never actually be even implemented to even a percentage.
Agree, couldn't agree more, Kamran. Or डेफिनेटली पेंडेमिक हैज प्लेड अ रोल, और उसकी वजह से जिस तरह बात शुरू में भी बात की कि ई कॉमर्स को बहुत बूस्ट मिला, एंड ऑल ऑफ अस आर नो यूज्ड टू अ डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ लिविंग. आज से 2 साल पहले वी कुडंट इवन इमेजिन ऑफ हैविंग अ वेबिनार लाइक दिस ऑन अ वेरी और डिफरेंट किस्म के फोरम्स में लोग पार्टिसिपेट करें. इट्स ऑल गोइंग ऑनलाइन.
And look,
सो
Pakistan is ripe for it, right? Like the cheapest telco data is available in Pakistan. The handsets, the smartphone utilization, the handset financing, handset usage, the variety of smartphones that are available right now, anywhere from 2,000 rupees all the way up. There are companies like iOS who are looking at transforming your feature phones into smartphones. So there is so much opportunity here. So I mean, there is no way why, if we collectively, if there's no behavior change, we cannot move towards a mass behavior change. But again, I strongly feel that the interoperability एक अलग लेवल के ऊपर है, जो probably एक regulator देख सकता है, लेकिन प्राइवेट इदारे आपस में कोलैबोरेट करके अपनी फील्ड्स में रहते हुए बहुत काम कर सकते हैं, rather than creating respective silos.
एग्जैक्टली.
So I think it's an era of collaboration, it's an era of partnerships, where each specialist can add value in their respective field and win together in terms of creating that ecosystem, rather than अपनी 1.5 इंच की मस्जिद खुद बनानी है और अपनी चीजें खुद करनी है और partnerships नहीं करनी है, या there's always a fear, there's always a paranoia that मेरा सोर्स कोड कोई चुरा लेगा, या मेरा कोई आइडिया चुरा लेगा और कुछ नया बना देगा. तो आई थिंक वी नीड टू पुट a little less
ट्रस्ट.
emphasis on paranoia and start trusting each other, and let's start working with an open platform, because if we can do that at a private level, then that will showcase what can be done at a level above us, which is the federal level or the provincial level.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kamran. Thank you very much, Naveed Saab. Thank you very much, Mohsin. We have already 17 minutes overrun. So now I'll be closing the session. Thank you for your valuable input. It has been very informative. Uh, बहुत और हम लोगों को आइडिया, पार्टिसिपेंट्स को भी आइडिया हुआ, हम लोगों के अपने लिए भी आइडिया कि कितना मार्केट के अंदर पोटेंशियल अवेलेबल है एसएमईज के लिए, उनको क्या चैलेंजेस फेस करने पड़ रहे हैं, और दिस कुड बी एड्रेस. गवर्नमेंट लेवल के ऊपर क्या करने की जरूरत है, एज प्राइवेट institutions, how can we pitch in, and what can be done to facilitate them, or the QR code interoperability जो आपने कामरान बात की है, it's definitely a very good idea. and it's cost effective और लोग इसको आगे लेके चलेंगे. Naveed साहब, thank you very much for uh, shedding light how demand and supply can be met and what challenges there are to be addressed there. और मोहसिन साहब, I think एक दफा फिर exit drop हो गए. So other than the exits that we had and the जो start में मेरे साथ हुआ और eventually हम digital मैं भी phone के ऊपर आ गया, digital हो गए. So it has been a very good session, very kind of you for having for attending this session and giving us time. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saad. Thank you, Naveed Saab. Always a pleasure talking to you. And, it's an honor to be on the panel with you. So great learning as always. And Saad, thank you for this opportunity. I think it's great. Let's see if we can do collectively, we can do something together
Sure,
for the
sure.
betterment of the
Definitely,
country.
definitely.
Likewise, thank you so much, and thank you for having me on board for this session. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, sir. It has
Allah
been a
Hafiz.
wonderful experience. Allah Hafiz.